Right, time to feed. Time to feed the flock here. Got a gang of guys over here, kind of intimidating group over here. Intimidating group over here in the corner. Pastor Chris Moore from Houston and Jonathan, he's security guard. Are you still a security guard? All right, so yeah, still a security guard there. Pastor Sturge is doing his best. No, I won't say that. With his sunglasses. There we go. Pastor Sleva taking notes. There we go. All right, how are you today? Okay, Lord, thank you. Bless this time in your word. All right, so going back to what, if you didn't see Pastor Schaller's message last night, his first message back from Finland, a good one on wandering. Also, the testimony, Pastor Matt Garrett, about how he wandered through from Altoona, Pennsylvania, up to Marlborough, Massachusetts, and then to Baltimore. Wound up becoming man. He laments that he wasn't born left-handed. If he were born left-handed, he'd be in the major leagues right now. But that's just what's that? That could be true. That's right. That's right. But we heard that. So I just want to sort of stick on that a little bit. Numbers 33, Pastor Schaller was going through those verses last night. Numbers is like, what do we say? Numbers is like a strange, it's a book that's sort of, right up there with the book of Judges, because it's like a book of disaster. Like it's a book of disaster stories, let's just face it. Well, actually, maybe not all disaster stories, but it just seems like disaster stories and, and names, lots of names. When you go through there, numbers, we see all the people are added up, categorized, shown who they belong to, tribal elements. Lots and lots of, we see that there are 600, and I think it's 600 some thousand fighting men, which is men over 20. So that's how they were calculated there in the book of Numbers at the beginning and then at the end. So during the wanderings in the wilderness, 600,000 fighting men perished because of a desire not to go into the place that God had given them. And so they were set apart to wander through the wilderness. And every one of those times when they removed, it was what was first removed. It was the cloud of witness that God kept them. So, it's true that those places, there wasn't really many places there. I mean, they got there and then the cloud would move and, the places didn't really have names in that. So I look at the book of Numbers, they have all the calculations. Then we get to the story of like the 12 of the spies. Also, there's what else is in Numbers? Let's think about it. We have the Korah rebellion, right? That happens. After that, we have, who is it? Miriam. Miriam doesn't like the fact that Moses took a African wife as his second wife, or maybe, Zipporah was his first wife. So Miriam didn't like that. And, she got leprosy for her issue. So that's in Numbers. So you go through Numbers, Numbers and Judges together there. Like we have the brazen serpent story. That's there, the Korah rebellion, fire from down. And then we see, let's rehash where you've been. See, you got brought to this place where you could go in. We sent 12 guys in. 10 of the guys did not see what they were supposed to see. They weren't in wonder of what God was supposed to have. Okay, I was told to be here. So I said I was told to be here, so that's all I see. All right. All right. Excuse me. All right. Let's see. We're talking. So the thing is, I think when we go to, I was reading this in Ezekiel 16, which is pretty an amazing chapter too. Pastor Thomas, I think he talked about it, about this part where what was Israel? She was seen as like an abandoned child covered in blood, but God took her. And it talks about this. This is really amazing. I've preached this at a marriage seminar. Husbands, what are you to do for your wives? And it's all here. It's like help her have bubble baths and perfume and good shoes and jewelry. And I'm sorry. That was like, here's the doctrine of the nose ring. It's here. You might not like it. It might like baffle you why someone would put a nose ring in, but it's right there in Ezekiel. Beautiful ring in your nose and your earrings all the way down. This is what I bestowed on you, it says, declares the Lord. And then it says in verse 15, but you trusted in your beauty and played the harlot because of your renown. And that changed everything, of course. And I'm thinking that the people who were delivered from Egypt, they were led to a certain place. 10 spies go in. You know, they had no sense of wonder for what God gave. They did have a sense of wonder, but coupled with that sense of wonder of what they saw, it was a land flowing with milk and honey, but it also had giants in it. And rather than believe God like Caleb and Joshua, believe that we can take, you know, what did Caleb say? He said, let's go up now. I want to go up now. You know, he's the guy who got the rawest of raw deals, I think. Well, not really. I mean, God preserved him, so he was as fit at 80 as he was at 40, which is amazing. We're all trying to get there. I want to be fit at 80 as I was at, I'm more fit now than I was at 40, I think. But anyway, but they had no sense of wonder. They had no sense of the beauty of holiness, what God had provided for them. They were brought out in order to be brought in, and when the spies came back, they gave an evil report. And what was the evil report? Evil report was, it wasn't about the land and the character of the land. It was everything God promised them. The evil report was that the God who brought them through the sea, the God that decimated an empire with plagues, a God that did that, a God that protected them by the blood of the Lamb, a God that protected them, the evil report was, not, we've been through all of this, and no, there's no way that God can do that again. 10 of the guys came back, gave an evil report about the Lord. The evil report was about the Lord. The evil report was not about the land. The land was everything God told them it was supposed to be. But they didn't believe they didn't believe their eyes. You know, they saw so much getting to that point, but they didn't believe it. And so they came back and said, we can't take it, except for Caleb. Let's go up right now. I watched the sea open, and I watched the sea bury chariots. Let's go up right now. And so this set them, and I think this conclusion of Numbers, this chapter 33, the rehash of all the wandering that they had done, was important. We don't like to be, what is it called, retrospective too much. Like, let's rehearse all of the failures that we had. Why did we have the 40 years in the desert? And this is what it was like, and why rehash that before you get to Deuteronomy, which is kind of interesting, because in Deuteronomy we start seeing a word that we haven't seen so much in the Bible to this point. We start seeing the word love. Deuteronomy is like one of the original. Until we get to Deuteronomy, we don't understand so much about why God chose Israel and his love for them, and why he was choosing them to be his representatives to this place, to the nations, to all the nations. This was, this was their destiny. This is what God wanted them to be. The recipients of my oracles. You're going to get my words. You're going to get my commandments. I'm going to be a God. I didn't choose you because you were the greatest, the multitude of peoples. I choose you because you were small. And you experienced slavery for a reason, so that when you are going forward, you would recognize what it was like to be oppressed and to be under control. And, so when we read through, how the people became stiff-necked and hardened and grumbling and murmuring and all that, but, it's easy for us to look at them and say we would never be that way. But the fact of the matter is by 10 a.m. every morning, I've grumbled a few times. I've complained about something. All these things happen in my heart. It's like it's real. I am just as much stiff-necked and hard-hearted as these people. But I'm thinking the wandering spirit that was, the wandering that they had to do. Now, who's the great wanderer? Job 1 does tell us that. Job 2 tells us that. And when I read this verse, you trusted in your beauty, verse 15, Ezekiel 16, this is really the essence of Lucifer's fall, is the fact that he became enamored with himself rather than with the one who made him. And so this left him in a state of restlessness because something wasn't satisfactory to him. He had no contentment. He was made by God, but he had no contentment. And, some reason that iniquity in him bubbled up. He wasn't satisfied with the position, wasn't satisfied with the equipment that God had given him, wasn't satisfied maybe with the assignment that he had been given, even though he's positioned at a certain place. It's there's an interesting thing in Job if you read it. One of Job's friends talks about the angels being in error. His angels he charges with error, which is kind of interesting. This is Job, I think it's 4, I think that's where Eliphaz begins his talk. But Eliphaz says something. The God, it's part of his argument. It's part of these three friends' arguments. God charges the angels with error. You think you're going to escape with it. So the three friends are going to start their court case against Job. Why did you lose all this stuff? Of course, there's something in you that God needs to punish. That was their thing. But, Job 1 and 2, we see that Satan is allowed into the presence of the Lord. And the Lord says, where you been? And he says, well, I wander to and fro around the earth, seeking whom I may devour. He doesn't say that part, but that Paul gives us that explanation. This is what the devil does. He has no rest. It's total rest. He has no sense of wonder about how he was made or who made him. And God allows this to, God allows him to, to do these things to Job, to allow these things to happen to Job. And we go through this process and we see that Job does have a lot of things to say about what's wrong with his situation. But God does, God does meet him at that point, There's a place where Job is twice the man he was. That's the thing. Job gets twice as much of what he had, but by the end, he's twice a man of God at the end of the story, Job 42. He comes to a sense of wonder. Job never wanders. That's the beautiful thing there. The devil does what he does to him, but we don't see Job ever wander. We see him complain. He moans and moans, and he thinks God is unfair in allowing him to go into it. He makes that complaint known to God again and again. He demands an audience with God, and he gets that audience with God. He says, I used to know you this way, but now I see you this way. And that's the wonder that he had in his heart. So we never got Job wandering away from God. We know that he's stuck. He said, I know my Redeemer lives. And I know that at a certain point, I will see him in my flesh on the edge. He had an understanding of the resurrection reality that was going to be coming. And so if we look at this book of Job and we look through the Bible, we see that if we lose the sense of wonder of what God has made us to be, or the sense of wonder of what God is going to bring to pass in the future, then, we will lose our way. There won't be a lamp unto our feet. There won't be a light to our path. We'll just be deviating everywhere, and we'll be left behind those kind of things. Okay? All right. I think that does it for me. All right. And those watching online, we have our AV guy has to run and do something else, so we may continue talking here. But